Welcome to Daily Papers, the podcast where we break down the latest and most interesting academic papers into something you can actually understand.
Today, we're diving into a paper that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction. It's about using AI, specifically the kind of AI that powers things like ChatGPT, to do one of the hardest things in science: discover new mathematical equations that describe the universe.
Exactly. Think about the most famous equations in history, like E equals mc squared or Newton's laws of motion. These are incredibly concise, powerful descriptions of how the world works, but finding them is incredibly difficult. For centuries, it's been the work of human genius.
But now we have large language models, or LLMs, and researchers are trying to use them as a sort of creative partner in science. The problem is, how do you guide an AI to discover something like that?
Right. The current approach is often a bit basic. You have the AI guess an equation, and then you test it against some data, and give it a single score, like 8 out of 10 for accuracy.
Which is a bit like baking a cake, having your friend taste it and they just say, it's okay. You have no idea what to fix. Was there too much salt, not enough sugar? Was it in the oven too long? A single score doesn't tell you why it's wrong or which parts are right.
And that is the exact problem this paper tackles. It's called influence-guided symbolic regression, and it introduces a much smarter way to give feedback to the AI. Instead of a single score for the whole equation, it gives feedback on every single ingredient.
So back to our cake analogy, this new method is like the friend who tastes the cake and says, okay, the chocolate flavor is amazing, the frosting is perfect, but you definitely used way too much salt. Now you know exactly what to change for the next attempt. This is what the paper calls granular feedback.
So let's break down how this system, which they call IGSR, actually works. It's a two-step process that repeats over and over, called a propose and prune cycle.
First is the propose step. The LLM acts like a creative brainstormer. It looks at the scientific data and suggests a bunch of different mathematical terms or expressions that might be relevant. Things like the square of this variable or the logarithm of that one. It just throws a bunch of potentially useful ideas on the table.
Then comes the prune step, which is the really clever part. The system calculates something called an influence score for every single term the LLM proposed.
An influence score is a simple but powerful idea. For each piece of the equation, it asks, if we temporarily remove this one piece, how much does the equation's accuracy get worse? If the accuracy plummets, that piece is clearly super important. We should keep it.
But if you remove a term and the accuracy barely changes, that means it was just dead weight. It wasn't contributing anything useful, so the system automatically prunes it or cuts it away.
So the AI proposes a bunch of ideas and the system rigorously tests each one, keeping only the high-impact components. This cycle of proposing and pruning allows the model to get better and better with each loop.
But there's still a risk of getting stuck. You might keep refining one specific type of equation and miss a completely different, much better one. It's like trying to find the highest point in a landscape, but getting stuck on top of a small hill, not realizing there's a huge mountain just over the horizon.
To solve that, the researchers integrated this cycle into a broader search strategy called a Monte Carlo tree search. That sounds complicated, but the idea is pretty intuitive.
Think of it like exploring a giant maze. Instead of just taking the path that looks best at the current intersection, a Monte Carlo tree search keeps track of all the paths you've tried. It encourages you to sometimes explore paths you haven't been down before, just in case there's a hidden shortcut.
It's a way of balancing what they call exploitation, making the best-looking path even better, and exploration, checking out new, unproven paths. This makes the search much more robust and less likely to get stuck on a small hill.
Okay, so the theory sounds great. A creative LLM guided by super detailed feedback using a smart search strategy to explore all the possibilities. But the big question is, did it actually work?
It absolutely did. The paper shows IGSR outperforming a wide range of other methods on all sorts of complex problems, from tumor growth to simulating epidemics, but the most stunning result came from a real-world case study in genomics.
This is the part that got me really excited. They took on a really complex biological question about something called RNA polymerase II. In simple terms, this is a tiny machine inside our cells that reads our DNA to make proteins. But sometimes, for reasons scientists don't fully understand, this machine pauses.
They fed IGSR a massive high-dimensional dataset with over 260 different biological features related to this process. The AI crunched the numbers, went through its propose and prune cycles, and eventually produced an equation.
And this equation pointed to something fascinating. It suggested a novel hypothesis that a chemical tag on DNA called DNA methylation was actively suppressing this pausing. This was an idea that wasn't established in the scientific literature. It was a brand new, testable hypothesis generated by an AI.
And the best part, the scientists didn't just publish the AI's equation. They took the AI's hypothesis and went into a wet lab, a real biology lab with cells and chemicals, to test it.
They used a drug to remove that specific DNA methylation tag from human cells, and then measured what happened to the pausing.
And the AI was right. Just as its equation predicted, when the methylation was removed, the amount of pausing significantly increased. They completed the entire scientific loop, from data to an AI-generated hypothesis to real-world experimental verification.
That is just incredible. It's not about AI replacing scientists. It's about building a new class of scientific instruments. Tools that can look at data that's too complex for a human to make sense of, identify a hidden pattern, and say, hey, you should really look over here. I think you might find something interesting.
And the core lesson from this paper is that the key to unlocking this is feedback. By giving our AI tools more detailed, granular, and structured feedback, telling them not just if they are right, but why they are right, we can elevate them from simple guessers to genuine partners in scientific discovery.
It's a powerful framework that could help accelerate research in all sorts of fields, from medicine to material science to climate change.
A glimpse into the future where human creativity and artificial intelligence work together to unravel the secrets of the universe, one equation at a time.
And that's all we have time for today on Daily Papers. Join us next time for another look at the world of research.